He's the working man, Maxie. He's the working man. He wasn't able to make it today, but there's some breaking news right now. So we haven't been focusing on the Niners at all throughout this entire Jimmy Butler run for the Warriors. We've been basically a basketball podcast, but there was a little bit of an inkling that something was coming about an hour ago. And then, boom, it happens. Schefter bomb. Deebo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. So just so everybody knows here, Max right here, classic Buffalo Bills fan. What's the Buffalo Bills fan take on Deebo Samuel to the Commanders?
You got out of the way early. You knew it was going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
You had the whole report come out at the Super Bowl that the trade was going to happen. It was out in the open, and you got it done before the offseason really started. Before the new league year opened, you get your first order of business done. Now you have your offseason. Now you go do anything else you have to do to try and get back to the playoffs, try and maximize this core one more time. And they knew Deebo wasn't going to be a part of it, and bon voyage.
It's so funny because can we just admit now that the Brandon Ayuk trade talks were just to maybe get a 5th-round pick, because it seems like maybe there was a trade coming up and the Niners just needed to push out something to get a 5th-round pick or get something from the Commanders. I think that was the Brandon Ayuk news, because for me, I don't think there's any way that you trade Deebo Samuel, you trade Brandon Ayuk, and not get anything back wide receiver-wise. That's just me. So I think that was all smoke and mirrors.
I think it was one of those ones where they identified that Washington was going to be the team to make a move, knowing how much cap space they have, knowing their need for receiver. And Jaden and Ayuk, they played in college together, and you had that whole thing last offseason with Ayuk watching film with Jaden and everything. Maybe there was that little, there's that little bit of if we did trade Ayuk, it would be the Commanders. Let's present to them, this is your price for Ayuk, but instead you're going to get Deebo for this price, and kind of just put it in their hands. So I don't know if that's really how it played out, but it was one of those, when I saw that he got traded the Commanders, that was the first thing I thought of was, even if those Ayuk rumors were real and had any substance to them, he probably only wanted to go to Washington. But now that's Deebo's home, and yeah, let's dive into it, baby.
I mean, that's a good point. So something that Schefter reported, I saw in the tweet after he said, Deebo going to the Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Now we're getting the info that apparently the Niners planned this. So this is from Schefter. He said that right when they picked Ricky Pearsall at 31, that it basically, they had the intention that this was going to be Deebo Samuel's last year with the 49ers, and they were going to set up a future with Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall as Brock Purdy's number 1 and number 2 options at wide receiver. And it makes sense because the entire time when we were dealing with that Brandon Ayuk contract saga, right before that, you draft Ricky Pearsall in the 31st overall pick. It seemed like Deebo was the one guy out. It seemed like you locked up Brandon Ayuk to a big contract. You allocated 1st-round draft capital to rookie wide receiver. So apparently this was a part of their long-term plan all along.
Yeah, they were never going to give Deebo a second big contract. And they've had the Deebo experience for 6-7 years now. They kind of knew what they had, and they knew that it was going to go off a cliff eventually. And he was never going to get that second contract. You gave Ayuk his third contract. You gave Ayuk his second contract. You get the new rookie deal, and you have Jawan on one of the better value contracts for a receiver based on production. So you're pretty set in that receiver room. Let's see what we can get for Deebo at this point. You would have liked for him to have a better year last year to get something more than a 5th. But at least it wasn't just an outright cut where you have to release him and get nothing in return. You get your 5th rounder. You have something to work with in April, and you see what you can do with it.
See, okay, so we kind of have to talk about how much is a 5th pick really worth, because maybe I'm wrong here. So we haven't had reports about this, but before the Deebo Samuel trade got confirmed, the 49ers, if they traded him before June 1st, are going to absorb a $31.55 million cap hit to the salary cap this year. And if they released him, you only allocate $10 million of that this year, and then you have $20 million in 2026. So we know that the Niners have $50 million in cap space coming into this offseason. My question is it even worth it to really get a 5th-round pick if you're also going to be giving up $31 million in cap space just to get rid of Deebo Samuel.
They've shown in the past that they kind of take advantage of those like middle round picks, like the 4th, 5th round. They draft better there than they do in the first round. So maybe in their mind, it's just throw some darts at the dartboard and see if something can hit. I mean, your expectations aren't going to be high. It's probably more of like a filler kind of guy just to be a rotational player. And sometimes you luck into a Fred Warner in that situation. So you never really know. But like I said, I think something's better than nothing in that situation. And
we may get a Remo appearance here, everybody. We may get my roommate Remo coming in. Hopefully he doesn't. He's the birthday boy, so send him birthday wishes if you're on the stream today. But there was a lot of bullshit with Deebo Samuel this year, Max. I mean, I know that you've gotten a kick out of it, but Cleats and Convo, Deebo all of a sudden decides to start up a podcast. It's the worst podcast put out on the internet. Him and Liv Moods. What do you think happens to Cleats and Convo now? Do you think that Liv Moods is going to travel out to Washington every week to film the podcast with Deebo or what?
I recommend StreamYard for all their podcast services from a distance.
Max, the show must go on. We have to get Cleats and Convo no matter what.
If people are asking for it, East Coast is a little low on podcasts right now. Playoff Paul George just shut down his podcast for the year, so they need some sort of content out there. So he's gonna have to keep it going for the people.
He's going to have to keep it going. So you had the podcast. I wouldn't say anything controversial came from the podcast because, like I said, it was a bad podcast. I don't think there was any deep conversations going there. If you want to see some accidental comedy, just look at Deebo's first ever podcast that he recorded with Brandon Ayuk. It's literally Liv Moods try to pull out any kind of information from Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and they are just dead silent, hoodies on. But like I said, it was just a terrible year all around for Deebo. You had the podcast. That wasn't really going off. And then the entire Niners team was struggling. You get to that Tampa Bay game where the tensions just clearly erupted, and Jake Moody misses a field goal. Deebo Samuel goes over to him, tells him to lock the fuck in, gets up in Tabor Pepper's face. Tabor Pepper responds back. Then Deebo, I don't know if you say it's a swing, but takes a little mini swing at him, pushes him in the neck, and causes a ruckus. They win that game, so it's not a complete nightmare, but right when that happened, you knew, I don't know if you want to call Deebo Samuel a leader on this team by doing something like that, and the production was way down. Kind of a nightmare. A nightmare all around.
Don't know if you really justified the C on your chest with a move like that, but yeah, I mean, it was all year with him. It was, I mean, you had reports in training camp that he was absolutely in great shape. And then you look at him, it's like, no, this dude's 20 pounds overweight. Like he was consistently overweight all year long. So he always had that. That just never produced. He never, especially when Ayuk went down and all those things, it was just clearly a guy that was a shell of himself from what he's done in the past. And yeah, when you're not producing and then you're also a cancer and you're doing that kind of stuff, there's a reason why you finished 4th in your division. So,
hey, you calm down over there, Max. You calm down over there, Buffalo Bills fan. I don't know if we should be taking shots at the Niners here, but going off the point that you last brought up. So coming into this training camp the past season, everybody, I mean, you're hearing it everywhere. This was, I don't know why it was billed as the last dance for the 49ers, because I would say that it's almost a similar situation now that you have a team that still has the chance to win a Super Bowl. You're still in that Super Bowl window, but everybody was getting excited because all you could hear is that Deebo Samuel showing up in the best shape of his career. A couple weeks ago, Tim Kawakami comes out with an article and brings up how everybody in the Niners organization is fed up with Deebo, wants to get rid of Deebo right away because he was 20 pounds overweight during the entire season. So I agree with you, Max. It's like, what are we getting? Is he overweight? Is he in the best shape of his life? It probably just comes down to the fact that Deebo Samuel is not the same player at all. I mean, we remember the rookie season that Deebo had where he just came onto the scene, burst onto the scene, was a great fit in that Kyle Shanahan offensive scheme. And then in that 2021 year, he's basically the Swiss Army knife that leads you all the way to the NFC Championship game where you lose to the Rams. But the past 3 years have just been a steady decline from that.
I mean, 2021 was one of the coolest offensive player years that you could find. I mean,
He was a stud, complete
if
stud.
it wasn't for Cooper Kupp literally having a triple crown season that year, like
Yeah.
we're probably talking a little bit more about how amazing that Deebo year was, because he was the offense that year. Like he was the reason why they were able to kind of make that playoff run and even get in the first place. So yeah, it's like you saw how great he could be, and you're like any given moment, you're just waiting for that to kind of just transpire again and come back. The closest thing you probably saw to that was that Eagles game in 2023.
Yeah.
Which was I was gonna bring it up later on. I wanted to know just like your favorite Deebo moment. As a non-Niners fan, like that's by far like the most memorable Deebo game to me. Was like going into that game, you kind of have your NFC Championship recap. He's talking all this Bradbury shit, and then he puts up those numbers. It's like, all right, like if you want to be in the media world and you want to talk your shit, like make sure you have a leg to stand on. And that game, he absolutely did. But yeah, so you saw what he could be, and then you just didn't see anything close to that this year. It's the Shanahan designed plays for him to run up the middle for 2 yards. Just they didn't work
Oh,
anymore.
it was awful, Max. And I think that's when you knew the Deebo 49er relationship was done, because you saw how, like you said, after that NFC Championship game in 2022, Super Bowl media week, he is just lining up the Eagles. Everybody's trying to say, like, what do you think of this Eagles team? You just played them in the NFC Championship game. Bradbury, trash, just bashing them the entire offseason. Then he comes in, has that game in 2023, lights up the Eagles. We kick the shit out of them. And then during this last Super Bowl, you see him wearing an Eagles jersey. He's repping A.J. Brown. And it's like, okay, maybe Deebo wants to get the fuck away from the 49ers. So that 2023 game was honestly, it was definitely a top 5 Deebo game. I brought this up with Sage, but Deebo was one of my favorite players. I think he was probably, out of all 49ers fans, he was definitely a top 5 favorite 49er. That 2021 playoff run, I mean, that was crazy. When we start off 4-6, towards the end of the year, barely to get into the wild card round, we have to put him in at running back. He plays running back, wing back, I guess. But that Cowboys game, the touchdown that he scored in the Cowboys game, and I just remember, Max, you're a big Vegas guy. You'll appreciate this. Drunk off my ass in the Mirage Sportsbook. I've been drinking there for 3 hours, watching that Bengals-Chiefs game, had $500 on Bengals money line, cashed it, and I'm like, okay, this is the perfect scenario. I'm up like $1,000 from the Bengals. Niners are in the NFC Championship game. Deebo, boom, takes a 50-yard pass or takes a screenplay, goes 50 yards for the touchdown. So out of all the Deebo moments, I got to say that Rams NFC Championship game, that one play jumps out to me for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he had
but there's so many. There's so many Deebo moments.
There's
he was
so
a
many.
Great player.
He was a great player, and obviously, like it's pretty crazy how just one just god awful year with all the shit that went on can really like kind of like fog the memory of that. But he was a great freaking player. Like, and I, from a next year perspective, I actually think he's in a really good spot to kind of bounce back a little. Like, I think he's going to go to Washington and be really good.
Yeah.
But obviously, for the Niners' sake, I think the time ran out for him to really make an impact here, and it was probably just one of those moves that for both sides you just had to carry on.
Yeah. So one more point that I wanted to bring up about when you really knew that Deebo Samuel was gone, that Rams game. I mean, talk about a nightmare. He comes out middle of the week, tweets out to everybody, "It's not me. I'm not getting the ball." Bitches at Kyle Shanahan. Thursday night football game at home for your season. I mean, the Niners were toast anyway. We just didn't know it yet, but that was the one game that you needed to win to keep the season going. I think he gets maybe, I don't know, 12 balls thrown at him the entire game, at least drops 3. Can't get any separation on like 5 of them. And the one that jumps out is the one that where he cut across the middle, had a wide open streak to the end zone to probably win the game, drops it right in his hands. So after that, you knew, like, okay, this is not going to work well for Deebo. But talk about him going to the Commanders, I agree with you, Max. I mean, I think that is going to be a good fit, not because I believe in Deebo and I believe in his ability, but I just think that Jaden Daniels was playing with scraps the
Oh, yeah.
entire year. The entire season we brought up, me and Sage, we love Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to end up being, dare I say it, a top 5 quarterback in the league. If he's not already around there yet, it's just, who is he going to jump over? Is he going to jump over Mahomes, Josh Allen? I think a lot of people may say that they trust him to jump over Lamar at one point because he could run and is probably a better thrower of the ball in the pocket than Lamar. But yeah, you got Terry McLaurin, and that was about it. I mean, they were rolling out Olamide Zacchaeus, and now you throw Deebo Samuel into that role. You got to say that the Commanders are a threat. I don't think Deebo's going to light up the stat sheet, but this definitely makes the Commanders better, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just he's not the focal point of the offense. Like you have Jaden, you have Terry. Like that's what your offense is based on. Kingsbury, I mean, they had Robinson and Eckler. They both produced this year. So Deebo's going to go in. He's going to be the third, fourth guy. And like, that's perfect. Like, I mean, the reality is Deebo has a lot of miles on him, like every Kyle Shanahan player does. And he's going to go and not have that same workload, and he'll be better because of it. I mean, it's still probably a 1 or 2 year window for Deebo to really kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say he's a prime player anymore. He's probably like right at the beginning of the end, but he'll still be productive, and the Commanders are still one of the better NFC teams. So he's going to be relevant. He's going to be a good weapon there for Jaden.
Dude, they're a sleeping giant. I brought it up right after the season. They have by far the most cap space over the next couple of years. They have draft picks galore. I mean, you didn't have that great of an O-line with Jaden. Didn't have that great of weapons, and that defense was stingy, but you saw what happened in that NFC Championship game. The Eagles were just too much, so you got Adam Peters in there at GM. I think that this had something to do with it as well, that John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan were dealing with Adam Peters. Adam Peters is probably a guy who really likes Deebo Samuel, believes in him, thinks that he can buy him at a low and maybe get some good value out of him. So
yeah,
they're going to be great. I think they're going to end up being a legit contender. Maybe not next year. I think it may be too soon for next year, but definitely over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of saw it 2 years ago, Stroud's rookie year, lights it up, and everyone's already ready to crown him as the next up, and then he kind of has that sophomore slump this year. I think Jaden's a little different just because he's a little bit more versatile. I think I like the foundation in Washington a little bit more than Houston, but you kind of made the same move that the Texans did. Like you had Nico Collins, you had Tank Dell, you go out and get Diggs. So now you have Terry, and now you're adding Deebo. So you're doing whatever you can to add more weapons for Jaden to try and elevate him. And you're not having you're getting Cliff Kingsbury back, so he didn't take any head coaching jobs. So you have that same continuity there. So I don't know. I mean, that in my opinion, he's already the best quarterback in the NFC. There's not a quarterback in the NFC.
You're not even going to give some love to Jalen Hurts, who just won the Super Bowl MVP.
I mean,
beat up Patrick Mahomes by 40 points.
It was maybe his only 2 games I would say that I've been really impressed with were the 2 games against the Chiefs, like the 2 years ago Super Bowl and this one. So I don't know. I was also just I barely paid attention to the Super Bowl, so I was a little tired that day. But
you barely paid attention to the. Oh yeah, that's right. So our buddy Max got married the night before, so we talking a little hangover.
We're a little
away from focusing on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think I maybe fell asleep like right when the second half started. So,
in all honesty, that was probably the best Super Bowl to fall asleep to.
Yeah, right. Like,
100%.
I went back. I'm like, I didn't miss much here, so don't have any regrets on that. But yeah, I mean, what Jaden did in year 1, obviously he's older for a rookie, so
I'll say this: best rookie quarterback season of all time. In my opinion.
I mean, you get to the NFC Championship game when your team was 4-13 the year before, and you're bringing in a bunch of guys to, like, you're bringing all those vets, right? You're bringing Bobby Wagner, you're bringing Zach Ertz, like you're bringing all these guys. It's like, oh, like we're going to try and build a foundation around him that's like solid, but you're not expecting anything. You definitely weren't expecting that, but they nailed the GM hire, they nailed the coaching hire, so you got to feel pretty good about that direction there. And hopefully Deebo goes in and he doesn't try and be Deebo. Like, just go in and play football.
Just shut the fuck up. You got Jaden Daniels. You got one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. Just literally shut the fuck up. do your cleats and convo and do your fucking job.
Yeah.
But I think that Deebo's definitely going to fit a little bit better on the Commanders because, let's be honest, Deebo's a gadget guy. I think that the entire reason that he succeeded on the Niners was because Kyle Shanahan's system, especially when Jimmy Garoppolo was a quarterback and he struggled to make passes down the field, Deebo was kind of that guy who could just do some gadget stuff around the line of scrimmage, maybe hop into the backfield a little bit, take some end arounds. And my opinion, maybe I'm wrong. I'll be honest, Max. I'm not a big X's and O guy. I'm not fucking David Lombardi or something. I'm not going through all the tape, seeing what's going on. But it seemed like when Christian McCaffrey came onto the 49ers that when you had a threat like McCaffrey in the backfield, a guy who could, first off, run, so you don't need Deebo as a running back anymore, which you signed him to a contract in 2021, partly due to that. And also you got a threat in the passing game out of the running back position. So it just seemed to me like Deebo's value instantly tanked as a 49er when they signed Christian McCaffrey. But on the Commanders now, I mean, Austin Eckler's not the same guy. And I forgot, who's their other, Brian Robinson. I don't think Brian Robinson's that legit of a running back. I think they're going to look to upgrade there. So I think there's some areas in this offense for the Commanders that Deebo Samuel could be a good fit because the Niners are trying to utilize him as that downfield runner out wide receiver, and he just can't. He can't run routes. So you got to kind of use him in a gadget fashion, and maybe Cliff Kingsbury could find a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he saw plenty of him when he was with the Cardinals. Dan Quinn knows plenty about Deebo trying to game plan against him. So I'm sure it was a group effort, and they kind of realized, like, hey, like, this is a guy that we could bring in, and we know what he brings to our team, and we believe that he's going to execute that. So like I said, for the price of a 5th-round pick, if you're Washington and you have the draft capital that you do and you have the cap space you do, I think it's a pretty easy sell.
Do you think that, and also I'm going to say this, I'm a little bit pissed that Deebo Samuel got this good of a landing spot for how he handled this entire season, comes out with the agent on the morning of Super Bowl Sunday saying that he's basically forcing a trade. The Niners have no choice just to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to be working with Deebo. Deebo's agent's going to be working to find a deal. It seems like they put the 49ers in a bad spot where they really couldn't negotiate for that great of a trade. He's going to be, I mean, Jaden Daniels, who else would you want to be with if you're a guy like Deebo Samuel? Like we already brought up, there's not really a piece in that offense that is a Deebo Samuel. He fits in seamlessly. So as a scorned 49ers fan, I'm a little bit pissed that Deebo landed so well after how much of an asshole he acted like this entire year.
And there was that one report that was, I forgot if it was out today or yesterday, where his preferred landing spots were either Houston or Denver. So even if you ended up in one of those,
did you hear what happened? Did you hear what happened?
No, I must have missed it.
That's where I was laughing my ass off because the tweet comes out from Ian Rappaport. It's like Deebo Samuel prefers to get traded to Denver or Houston. And I think it was Diana Rossini who reported it, and she said, the thing is that Denver and Houston have no interest in trading for Deebo Samuel.
I didn't see that.
So it was almost sad. It's like, okay, Deebo, he's just like throwing himself out to teams, and they're like, 5th-round pick? No, thank you, bro. We're cool here.
And when that Super Bowl report came out, I remember our group chat, I texted right away. I was like, Texans. Like, Texans were the most obvious spot to me because Diggs is a free agent. He got hurt, so I don't know whether they're going to run that back. Tank Dell, obviously, I think CJ Stroud might still be crying about that injury, so he's not going to play this year. So it was just it seemed like a good spot for what if you're trying to maximize that quarterback on a rookie deal. You bring in a guy like that who has a little bit of a higher contract, and you try and make that work. But Washington was kind of like okay, that's a no-brainer, especially since they were in the Ayuk talks last year and everything, and Jaden's already proved that he's worthy of building around. So
think about this, though, Max. So you had those 2 AFC teams, Houston, Denver, that they're saying that they weren't interested in Deebo. Maybe there were some talks, but this tells me that the Niners have no fear in sending Deebo Samuel to the Commanders because the Niners are in a Super Bowl window, and Washington just made the NFC Championship game. You're giving the Commanders a guy that you just signed to a $20 million a year contract 2.5 years ago. I have a feeling that they kind of know the inside intel that Deebo Samuel is a little bit washed up. He's not the same guy, and that's the only thing that makes sense to me because if I have a wide receiver who I think is a difference maker and could put the Commanders on the next level, I would not trade him in the conference where I'm trying to make it back to the Super Bowl. I would send him the fuck to the AFC, and if we beat him in the Super Bowl, then we cross paths. But that's what it tells me.
Yeah, it's I I actually didn't even think about that point, but it's like it's true. It's I guess this is like a bigger Niners topic, anyways. But you had mentioned the point with the Last Dance thing last year. Like, I just don't get how it could be a Last Dance situation when your starting quarterback is on a rookie deal. Like that doesn't really scream Last Dances to me. But what the hell do I know, right? But yeah, it's one of those ones where if you're the Niners, you look at it as last year, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And you believe that even if you had Deebo this year, it wasn't going to make or break your success. And you didn't care where he was going to go. You feel good about the people in the room now and who you're going to bring in. And you go to war with that. And you get that fourth place schedule and you just make some memories happen.
And I think a part of it was that Juwan Jennings came onto the scene so strong this year. Ricky Pearsall had the great end of the season where you really look at the wide receiver room and it's like, are we actually going to give Deebo Samuel snaps over Juwan Jennings, who could go up and get balls, is a great possession receiver? Ricky Pearsall, who is on a rookie deal, honestly looks like a better wide receiver than Deebo. And then Brandon Ayuk, the guy that you paid $30 million a year. So, yeah, it just seemed like
you have those three, and you have Kittle, who you need to re-up. And it seems like that was kind of like their stake in the ground, right? It's between Deebo or Kittle, who are we going to make a Niner forever? And I mean,
that is the easiest decision of all time.
Easiest decision ever. Like you lose no sleep over that. You make sure Kittle never puts on another uniform, and Kittle was amazing last year. Like for everything that went wrong with the Niners, like you had one of Kittle's best seasons. So you have to feel very good about that going into 2025.
Yeah, and me and Sage talked about it a couple weeks ago. We said, okay, Deebo, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Like, we really did not think that there was a big impact in letting go of Deebo Samuel. Shit, I think we said it in week 8. Like, we were pretty early on it. But going back to the Last Dance stuff, Max, can we retire that? Can we retire calling everything the Last Dance for people? Especially, like, I'm a Niner fan. I love this team, but let's be real. This team has never won a Super Bowl. They've had 2 10-point leads blown in Super Bowls. Let's not ever compare them to Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls dynasty and call this the Last Dance. Like, Last Dance for what? Blowing another fucking playoff game, leaving me in heartbreak.
All I can think about is what do you think LeBron's going to name his last season?
Oh my God. Okay, so Max, let's just bring it up. I don't know if you have to go. No, let us know.
Listen, I'm here. We got 30 minutes till the Dubs game. So
yeah, let's talk LeBron, because what a fucking guy. This guy. It's almost like every week he comes up with some new shit. So Anthony Edwards gives a interview, basically says, I don't even want to be the face of the league, right? LeBron goes and says, yeah, I can't blame him, honestly. Like, all the people who report on this game just talk shit about the game, talk down on the game. Like, who would want it? Okay. LeBron, literally since he's 18 years old, has labeled himself the chosen one. Gotten on Sports Illustrated when he was 17 years old. His entire career. Maverick Carter, fucking
Rich Paul.
Rich Paul, just behind the scenes, marketing everything. The decision. Who does that? Who does their own televised decision to make a free agency move? And the entire way, leaves Cleveland, Miami, about 4 years after, when Dwayne Wade starts to deteriorate a little bit, goes to Cleveland, goes to LA. I can't believe the guy. His entire career has literally been trying to be the face of the NBA. He has the same number as Michael Jordan. Does this guy believe what's going on in what's coming out of his mouth? It's almost like, and people eat it up. Like, ESPN just puts it on to the fucking front of the page, and people talk about it on Fox Sports, ESPN, everything. It's like, yeah, honestly, the media is pretty hard on these people. It's like, how could you possibly believe what LeBron's saying and not just call him out for what he is? A complete fucking liar. I'm sorry, but I just cannot do the LeBron stuff anymore. He's so fucking fake. It's ridiculous.
His when he does his retirement tour, it is going to be must-watch television every night because he's going to be so excited. Like, he's going to care so much more about the gifts that the 29 other teams and eventually the Lakers give him. Like, he is going to like take that stuff so seriously. It's going to, like I said, it's going to be must see. Like, he is going to completely change the way that we've ever looked at retirement tours. And
100%.
And especially now you have Luka there. So it's that much more of a draw. Like, it's great. It is. Hate him or love him, the dude's must watch TV. Like, like he's a drug. Like,
I love to hate him. I love to hate
right?
him. That's for sure.
And when he's not in the league, we are gonna miss him just because like there is that entertainment value of like God, like for in spite of just how amazing of a basketball player he is, like call him number one, call him number two, whatever. Like
the corniest dude of all time.
It
Literally
is
the
so
corniest dude of all time.
It is just pure entertainment. It's just the funniest stuff ever.
And I'm just going to shout it out, but the Malcolm X book, the Godfather book, coming out with a book as there's also people don't see this side of the screen, right? So they're just like, oh, LeBron's just there. He probably just has his book. No, there are 50 media people behind him. So when he's there, he purposely takes out the book, puts it on his lap, gets asked about it. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you know, I really liked his message. They're like, yeah, what do you think about the Malcolm X book? What do you think about the Godfather book? What's your favorite quote? Oh, you know, I like all of them. Just so full of shit, Max. I just cannot believe this guy at all.
I mean, I would say the same thing about the Godfather. I mean, yeah, my favorite quote in the Godfather is all of them.
I mean, you've never watched the Godfather, so if there's any chat in here, please just lambast Max for not watching the Godfather. Crazy. Best movie of all time. Max, I'm telling you, Godfather Part 2. Better than Part 1, but Max, we're up to 30 minutes here. I just want to thank you so much for hopping on the pod, dude. I'm going to say it right now. Max has been the #1 supporter of the Westbound and Down podcast. Sage is out making the dollars on a Saturday. We got to respect the hustle from Sage. Was not able to make it today, so Max jumped in, but Deebo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Maxie, anything for the crowd before we hop off here?
You guys ever hear the story of Wally Pipp?
People are saying, Max, I don't know. You got me thinking. Now.
Listen. These guys are the best. Whenever they need me to jump on and shoot the shit, it's a no-brainer for me. Be able to step in for my guy Sage. Always happy to help. I mean, even though business was handled, obviously Deebo no longer a Niner. That's unfortunate for you guys. Like he's still a linchpin in the. I mean, you guys have had a fun 5-6 years of watching Niners football, even if it hasn't resulted in a Lombardi trophy. But Deebo was one of those guys, and I think now that he's gone, it'll be a little bit easier to appreciate him and not always shit on him, knowing that he's not going to wear that uniform next year.
Even though Deebo Samuel is not a 49er, I do appreciate all the moments that I had with him, Max, for sure. But that will not stop me from roasting his podcast at every single turn. I cannot wait for next year. I cannot wait for him and Liv Moods to figure out how they're going to do the podcast and how they're going to put out shitty content continually throughout the NFL season. That's going to be it for the stream today. We got the Warriors coming at 5:30. Holy shit, Max. The time kind of caught up on me here. We got the Warriors tipping off in 30 minutes. Warriors minus 8.5, Max. What do you think? Warriors or Sixers?
Hammer the Warriors right now. I mean, that's most fun team to watch right now. It's anyone that doubted that Jimmy pickup is are we sure we don't want Wiggins back?
That was the craziest one, Max. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, the past 2 years, we've basically been praying to get rid of the fucking guy after the contract that we sold him. He was out for a season, basically for half the season. And now when we have the option to get Jimmy Butler, people are like, no, we can't get rid of Wiggins. Give me a fucking break. Can't wait for the game today. Jimmy Butler out, by the way. So I don't know. Maybe hedge your bets a little bit. Maybe put the Warriors 8.5 in a parlay. Maybe tease it down to 1.5.
The Sixers just ruled out Embiid for the season, so I'm thinking the vibes are not too high in Philly, and they very badly would like to lose this game because they have that their first rounder is top 6 protected, so they are trying to get a top 6 pick. So you know who has that draft pick if it doesn't go to them?
Hopefully, it's not the Lakers.
Is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
The Thunder, honestly, all the Thunder's moves have aged so fucking well. Like trading Paul George for like 11 first-round picks and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Like that almost like doesn't seem real with like where we are at this point in our NBA life with Shea either going to finish number 1 or number 2 in MVP voting and Paul George having to shut down his podcast with Philly. He's not even with the team that he got traded to anymore. He's now in Philly and they are going to be a lottery team. So NBA is just that league.
I think it's the ultimate bad move for him to stop the podcast though, because he's been asked so far this year. He's averaged 16 points with the podcast. I mean, what if you drop the podcast, act like you're going into 0 dark 30 mode, and then you're still averaging only 16 points, shooting 40% from the field? I don't know. It's a bad look, I feel. Bad look, I feel, if you shut down the podcast and you still play like shit.
Philly media won again. They took down another.
Philly probably not going to be greasing the polls today for anybody to climb up those polls in downtown Philadelphia. They're not going to be that hyped for this game, but we're hoping that the Warriors keep the streak alive. What is it, about 5 games now? They got 3 more games left of this road trip coming up, so hopefully they could get into that 6th spot before the end of the day. But I got to say, Max, this is a Niners day. Like I said, signing off, Deebo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. The Deebo Samuel era is over, but for Westbound and Down, the era has just begun. Max, thanks for coming on the show today. We'll talk to you guys later.